Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz singer and educator Cathy Segal-Garcia. We caught up with her on May 5th, 2020 to talk about how she has been doing during this COVID-19 lockdown. And we talked to her about her career as one of the most prolific jazz vocal recording artists on the West Coast and a key figure in the LA jazz scene. We squeezed in a little bit more, so enjoy.
Crazy time.
Oh, my God, isn't it? I think probably talking about music is probably a good idea at this stage of the game.
Yeah, definitely.
So at any rate, any good news coming out of LA as far as all of this is concerned?
I just heard that things are going to start lightening up, but I'm not sure what that means exactly. So probably, I'm guessing that even later today, excuse me, you know, it might even lighten up even more. You know what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I know they closed the parks and the beaches because people were congregating, you know, and getting too close. So, yeah, that is still probably on hold, but yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. We just have to kind of wait and see, right? It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's bizarre. Like, I'm at a point right now where I understand all the safeguards and procedures and everything that needs to be done, but when we start, like, snitching on each other and getting weird about everything, it's like, it's not a good idea. And you know, in almost 2 months, we've had to revoke every social grace that we've been taught since we were kids. So, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, how do you get to the point where it's like, oh my God, you can't go to the beach. You live in one of the most glorious locations on the planet, but God forbid you try to get a little bit of, you know, sanity into your soul and maybe feel normal for, you know. So anyway, I think it's a double-edged sword. I understand what we're doing, but I also understand too that the American population already had an anxiety problem, and the pandemic on top of it probably isn't doing us any good. So, you know, I'm just hoping that, you know, we get to the point where we're realists about all this and, you know, we just get to a better place. So, but I think that music and artists are going to have actually really led us to a very, very positive place, and we should recognize musicians in the same light, I think, as other frontline workers that are out there, because it's been vital for the mentality of everybody. So,
yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. The creativity that's in demand and that's going around is it's astounding, actually. And I feel like there's a group mentality for artists. It's nothing kind of manufactured. It's a natural feeling, a natural occurrence that's happening for artists, that they feel that they're pushed to creativity and pushed to, you know, give it. So I agree with you.
So what are you doing creatively during this time to keep your id in check and to keep everything kind of going in a positive direction?
Yeah, well, one thing I'm doing, which I felt I got called to do it really early, you know, I'm doing these Facebook Live interviews / games. At first, I thought, I'll just do it for like a half hour. I'll call somebody up and we'll talk. Well, yeah, a half hour. I don't know what I was thinking. It turned out to be 2-hour hangs, and so I've done probably like my 45th one already, and so I'm doing that 6 days a week. And there's hundreds of people that I know that I can call, and all kinds of people, mostly jazz people, but some kind of a mixed bag and a little bit of business. But it's creative and it's fulfilling, because I'm definitely a person who has been a community builder. It's just in my nature to gather groups of people and to have things that work for a lot of people, you know. So, so that was just a very natural expansion of my creativity. And so I've had, well, you can look at you can look on my website for the past people who have showed up, but lots of great people. Are you just tell me before I continue, are you a musician or are you a jazz person per se, or what do you do? What is your knowledge base?
I'm a recovering journalist. I used to, I originally got into journalism to cover sports and ended up getting out because it just wasn't something that I wanted to do. And I've always kept in with the journalistic realm. And to make a long story short, I bought a Radio Shack raccoon stuffed animal with a radio in its belly, and I heard a station called the Neon Beat, which is a American songbook station here in Kansas City, and reached out to the host and just found out that he was 4 blocks away from me. I wrote an article on him. He invited me over and said, write a script. I got a studio. He was an engineer by day and got all this old equipment for all these radio stations in Kansas City. And the idea was jazz. That was April 2011, and I've been doing it ever since. I'm on my 664th show, and I'm probably done over 1,000 interviews since then. So it's been it's kind of culminated into a passion for me.
So this is where David Bassie is, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. He's a friend of mine, an old friend of mine. Wow. Okay. So now I get it. Okay. Yeah. So good. Well, first of all, congratulations. That's really a great story, and I applaud you. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And why I asked that was I was just going to, name a few people, but if you didn't really know who they were, it didn't really matter. But anyway, people like John Clayton, who's highly respected bassist, arranger, composer, teacher, to like Cheryl Benteen from the Manhattan Transfer, and just all kinds of various people, and some people who are not that super well known, and some people who are. But the cool thing about that is it definitely ties us all in together. It's really intriguing to hear how somebody came up, from their childhood and got to where they are, and then hear their music and also hear their points of view about life and and music. Some people take, as you probably know, some people take the first hour to kind of warm up, like they don't really know, they don't really draw out of themselves what they really feel. And then after about an hour, they start getting excited, and they start talking more. But I've held vocal workshops in my house for 20 years, and literally hundreds of people I've hosted to be clinicians as well as myself, people who come through LA or people who live in LA. So I've seen a lot of what I'm talking about in a slightly different way. What I've noticed about teachers is that they've gone through something in their life that's dramatic, and the things that worked for them to pull them out of the drama becomes their operating basis for their life, and then that's what they actually teach. They teach that operating basis. So it's pretty fascinating. We always talk about the same things, but from a totally different viewpoint,
Yeah. It is interesting, and I've been very active in talking to musicians since all of this has happened with COVID-19, and it's very interesting to hear the different point of views and how my perspective on what I want to ask and how I want to delve into it has changed. And I think one of the big things that I've been really wanting to kind of delve into, I think it's good to talk about the history, but I think right now we're kind of overshadowed by what's going on. So my question to you is that when this started around mid-March, what was starting to get canceled? How did you realize we were getting ready to enter into a very unprecedented pandemic time?
Well, one thing for me was that I was scheduled for mid-April for 3 weeks to go to Japan, and I was slow on the uptake as far as canceling right away. You know, I was going to Hiroshima for a week, Osaka for a week, and Tokyo for a week. And my friend, who is a singer and a doctor in Tokyo, she was the first one who said, "I don't think you should come." And so I was looking at that and considering it, but it took me, I'd say it took me almost 2 weeks to really, you know, feel like I was going to cancel. My other friends in Osaka and Hiroshima didn't seem bothered by it, you know. And so that was interesting. I finally just realized, I just looked at all the kind of whizzing around and the variables that were happening, and I just realized that, you know, I can't go. And then also I had gigs. Personally, I had gigs. It became apparent that people were canceling gigs all over the place. You know, I had a friend who was a sound man, and he lives near me. He has a studio near me, and he had this gig in Vegas where he was the sound man for a big hotel's kind of quote-unquote jazz club, and it was a really great gig, paid him well. He could come back and see his family during the week and then go up there on the weekends. And that just, you know, overnight just went. So when I saw these overnight shutdowns, it was obvious that our business was going to change. And I think more than even, for me personally, more than even having the gigs themselves was the realization that we couldn't gather together. You know, I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand, of course. You know, you go to a club to see live music, but you're around people. So, you know, but so maybe possibly one of those overshadows the other. But and then I do workshops and teaching, so that was being put on hold. What was exactly your question again? I think I could.
No, you did. I just wanted to know the beginnings of all of this, and I think what I've learned about asking about how things kind of started to get into shutdown and the reality started honing in is I like to ask musicians, like, how healthy is jazz? And I'm learning that right now without even asking the question, because the amount of gigs that even one person is canceling is staggering. And we're not just talking gigs or regular house gigs in America. We're talking overseas, multiple things. So the vitality of jazz is huge, and it's doing very well. And, you know, if there's ever a group of musicians, of artists that do this not for the money but for the art, it's jazz. And if there's ever a group that's probably well-versed to deal with this, because jazz is a one-time thing, no matter how much you want to duplicate it, you never Bill Murray Groundhog Day it, it's jazz. So I think that inherently this group of musicians are probably pretty well suited to recover pretty well from this period. Yeah.
I would hope so. I would hope that's true. I definitely feel, I don't know about you, but I feel a state of mind amongst my friends. I don't know if they are clear about defining it. It's definitely creative. People, when you speak with people, for the most part, people are cheerful, and they're doing things like, you know, picking up a new instrument or practicing the instrument that they should be practicing, or writing, you know, or recording, or something creative like that. And so, yeah, I have my feelings about what that headspace is, you know. But I think it's more apparent now that what we're doing is rewarding, worthwhile to the general public. And I've heard that in different ways. And yeah, I think that's really important. That's something that, in fact, somebody said that they thought that this was going to make it more apparent how important going out and hearing live music was, you know. So I don't know if that'll change or not, and who knows when we'll get back to that, you know. What are your feelings, Joe, about when we'll get back to clubs?
I think, you know, I think from what I've heard and my gut feeling with just everything and the possibility of a second wave and a vaccine coming out in the winter, it won't be until the winter. Now, I think we're going to have lower end capacities if things are going to happen. I think we're going to have to revise what we define as normal, just like baseball not having fans. I think we're going to have to understand that we're going to be able to ingest levels of live music, but with less people and adding more people. I think we're going to have to baby step back into this because at this point now, we've been in this long enough. I don't think there is this old norm we're going to go back to. I think we've changed so much. We just can't go back to an era of, like, say, let's recreate the 1950s. Well, you're not going to. That's over with. Let's recreate March 12th. You aren't going to do it. We're going to romanticize that as a modern-day rapture, and we're going to realize that this new world, we're going to have to protect it for our children in the form of vaccines and taking the scientific and the good political minds at face value so we can avert these kinds of things in the future. Because at this point right now, we're in face mask, disinfectant, staying away land. As alien and all this hustly as it is, we are not going back. And the only thing that we can do right now is draw on what we knew before this. And if you're a positive, resourceful person, it's going to flourish in probably very good survival, enriching ways. If you're not, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how that's going to manifest. But I think at the end of the day, we are in for a phasing in. And if we're optimistic and play it smart, I think we can start working in some of these things that we can have a hybrid of virtual and actual people to get people back in the clubs, to keep the clubs alive and to keep the economy moving in some sort of way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Mixture. I'm curious too. I have a very good friend who's his house has been the area for a house concert. Really great space. It's downstairs. Over the years, he actually built this space. He was first a musician, and then he owned an industrial company, so he made a lot of money. And he'd been having, for 20 years, he'd been having like a Tuesday night, not a jam really, but a rehearsal band, you know, with like 8-piece band, where anybody could just come over and listen. And also, we used the space for special concerts. You know, I mean, that's his house, right? And inviting people into his house, you know, there's going to have to be some kind of point where he's going to have to feel secure about doing that again, you know. Even friends. I mean, I have a friend who got the virus just hanging out with his friend and his wife, you know. His wife had it, and they didn't know it. So it's definitely going to be a slow return, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And the viral thing, like this week, I did 2 workshops in Japan, and that was good. That was fun and good, and you know. But the Japanese workshops are a little different because they're kind of a little bit wide-eyed and innocent. You know, there's a lot of things that can be discussed over the airwaves. Of course, any teacher would rather have their students in front of them so they can watch them closely and put their hands on them if they have to, and you know, that also have the piano player play for them, that kind of thing. But I'm just beginning. I'm a super active person. People are I'm the kind of person people always say, do you sleep? You know, and I do sleep, but I put out a lot of PR, and it looks like I'm doing a lot because I'm always thinking of new ideas to start. So it took me this long, really, to feel like I might want to start workshops of my own, just here or wherever. That's kind of the beauty of what's going on. I could actually have workshops with myself or Cheryl Benteen or anybody on Zoom and have people, pay that way and come to the workshop. And I could do that in a very broad way that I haven't really done before because there wasn't that much reach for that before. I mean, people would pay to come online, but a lot of times it just didn't, without going into that too deeply, it didn't work as well as I think now it will work. And there's this thing happening now where people are recording together, right? Videoing together and editing it so that it looks really great. It looks like it's in time with or it sounds like it's in time with each other. And so that's kind of a whole new field as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely it is, without a doubt. And the one thing I do want to do is just have an open, active discussion about what's going on right now. I think that's a big thing, and I think that can manifest in a myriad of different ways. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest singers and players in Los Angeles, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Cathy for her time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.